They laughed at my soldier money and called me the backup plan, then lost $250,000 and their house. In my family, assets and liabilities were clearly defined. My brother Alex was the investment in the future. Me, Mark, I was the insurance policy. The problem with insurance policies is you only remember they exist when the house is already burning. Growing up, Alex was a golden child, charismatic, smart in that way that makes adults at dinner parties lean in and nod approvingly. He had this way of talking about ideas, big sweeping concepts about disruption and innovation that made people forget he'd never actually built anything. My parents ate it up. The future Steve Jobs, they called him, the one who'd change the world. Me, I was practical, steady, the kid who fixed the family computer, mowed lawns for cash, and got B+s without much fuss. Not exceptional, just reliable. And in a family with a would-be visionary, reliable is just another word for forgettable. When we hit high school, the differences became impossible to ignore. Alex got into this prestigious private college, the kind with ivy-covered buildings and a tuition that made my dad's face go pale when he opened the acceptance letter. But they celebrated anyway. Champagne, the whole deal. Mom cried happy tears. Dad clapped Alex on the back and said this was the best investment they'd ever make. I remember sitting at that dinner table, watching them toast Alex's future and doing the math in my head that school cost more per year than most people's cars. We were a middle-class family from the Midwest. We didn't have that kind of money, not even close. 2 months later, I told him I was enlisting in the Air Force. The reaction was underwhelming. Mom looked concerned in that absent way, like I'd announced I was taking up jogging. Dad nodded and said that sounded like a solid plan. Alex barely looked up from his laptop, where he was researching startup incubators. No champagne, no tears, just a quiet acknowledgement that I'd figure out my own path, which was good because they were busy financing someone else's. Here's what nobody tells you about military service. It's not really about patriotism or honor or any of that stuff they put in the commercials. I mean, sure, that's part of it. But for a lot of us, it's simpler than that. It's about the GI Bill. It's about not being a burden. It's about looking at your family's financial situation and thinking, okay, I can either add to this debt or I can handle my own situation. I chose the latter. Basic training was exactly what you'd expect. Brutal, exhausting, transformative in that way that breaks you down and builds you back up into something more efficient. I went in as a kid who fixed computers. I came out as an Air Force technician, specializing in communication systems. Real skills, marketable ones. But more importantly, I learned how to save money. When you're deployed, there's not much to spend it on. No bars, no restaurants, no entertainment beyond whatever you can fit on a hard drive. Your paycheck just accumulates. And when you're in a combat zone, that paycheck gets real nice. Tax-free, hazard pay, the works. 6 months into my first deployment, I'd saved $15,000. 15 grand. At 20 years old. I was proud of that number. It represented discipline, sacrifice, a future I was building one paycheck at a time. I took leave and flew home to surprise the family. The house looked the same from the outside. Same driveway, same lawn, same basketball hoop hanging over the garage that nobody had used in years. But walking through that front door, I could feel the tension immediately. It hung in the air like humidity before a thunderstorm. My mom hugged me tight, held on a little too long. She looked tired. My dad shook my hand with that firm grip of his, but his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. And Alex breezed through the living room in a designer suit that probably cost more than my entire deployment wardrobe, gave me a quick bro hug, and disappeared upstairs for an important conference call. I spent the first day just observing. Old habits from tech work. When a system's malfunctioning, you don't just start pulling wires. You watch. You gather data. The data was concerning. Credit card bills stacked on the kitchen counter. Not hidden, just sitting there like they'd given up pretending everything was fine. I saw payment notices from multiple banks. I saw a letter from a company called something like Speedy Capital Solutions, which is never a good sign. Those outfits don't send letters to people with healthy finances. I saw the strain in how my parents moved around each other, that careful dance of two people avoiding a conversation they desperately needed to have. At dinner that night, Alex dominated conversation like always. He talked about his startup, some revolutionary app that was going to disrupt the entire financial services industry. He used words like synergy and scalability and market penetration. My parents nodded along, asking eager questions, their faces hopeful in that desperate way that made my chest tight. I waited until Alex went upstairs. Then I asked a question. So I sat down across from them at that same dinner table where we'd toasted Alex's future years ago, and I said it plain. Mom, Dad, I can see the bills. I've saved $15,000. Let me help. Let me pay off that credit card. Let me make a few mortgage payments. Give you some breathing room. My father laughed. Not a mean laugh, exactly, but dismissive. The kind of laugh you give a kid who offers to help carry groceries, but can barely lift a bag. He actually reached over and patted my shoulder. Mark, he said, put away your soldier money. We're not charity cases. Soldier money. Like it was Monopoly cash. Like I hadn't earned every dollar of it in places where people actually got hurt. Before I could respond, Alex came back downstairs. He must have heard part of the conversation, because he jumped right in. He stood there in his expensive suit, leaning against the doorframe with this amused smirk, and just laid into me. Seriously, bro? $15,000? That's lunch money. That's what I spend on client dinners in a month. Don't worry about it, G.I. Joe. I've got a major deal closing next quarter. Multi-million-dollar funding round. I'll buy them a new house outright. You just focus on your little adventure overseas. The way he said it. Your little adventure. Like I was backpacking through Europe instead of maintaining communications systems in a combat zone. My mom chimed in then, her voice soft and apologetic in that way that somehow made it worse. She said they appreciated my concern. Really they did. But my money was... She paused, searching for the word. Sweet, she finally said. It was sweet that I wanted to help. But they'd be fine. Alex was going to turn everything around. I looked at the three of them. My father with his dismissive smile. My mother with her gentle rejection. Alex with his smug confidence. Soldier money. Lunch money. G.I. Joe. I saw the stack of bills on the counter behind them, including that letter from Speedy Capital Solutions. I saw the hole they were in, and I saw something else. They would rather drown in that hole than be saved by me. The insurance policy they forgot they had. The backup plan that wasn't worth remembering until the fire started. I nodded slowly. Got it. You're right. You've got it handled. I finished my visit, smiled at the right times, didn't bring up money again. And 2 days later, I flew back to base. When I landed, I didn't call home to let them know I'd arrived safely like I usually did. Instead, I opened my banking app and started researching index funds. Mission accepted. I stopped offering help, and I started investing every single penny they'd mocked. 10 years passed. A decade is a long time to watch an investment fail from a distance. Long enough to serve your country, earn an honorable discharge, and build a real career. Long enough to see every promise made at that dinner table expire, like milk left out in the sun. I got out of the Air Force after my contract was up, took my skills, my security clearance, and my clean record straight into civilian contracting. Cybersecurity for defense contractors. The pay was excellent. The work was steady, and nobody called it soldier money. I had a solid 401k that I'd been maxing out since day one. Zero debt, not even a car payment. I lived below my means, invested the difference, and watched compound interest do what it does best. The insurance policy had been paying its own premiums, and the cash value was getting impressive. Meanwhile, back home, the future Steve Jobs was finally closing his big deal, just not the kind he'd promised. $250,000 in debt. I found out through Mom. Of course. She called on a Tuesday afternoon while I was at work. Her voice had that brittle quality that comes from weeks of crying. She didn't lead with hello. She led with we need to talk about your brother. Apparently, Alex's revolutionary business ventures had taken an unexpected turn. The startup that was always 6 months from profitability had pivoted into something called cryptocurrency arbitrage, which, as far as I could piece together from Mom's scattered explanation, meant Alex had borrowed money to bet on digital coins going up, and they had gone very, very down. But that wasn't all of it. There were other debts too. Expenses that didn't quite add up. High-end dinners that turned out to be at casinos. Business trips to Vegas that lasted a little too long. Credit cards maxed out on ventures that existed only in Alex's imagination. The golden child had discovered that confidence and charisma don't actually pay bills. Who knew? Mom tried to frame it gently. Your brother made some mistakes. He trusted the wrong people. The market turned against him. He's a victim of circumstances beyond his control. I listened. I made appropriate sounds. I asked careful questions. How much does he owe? $250,000. When did this happen? Over the past 3 years. Do you and Dad have any exposure? Silence. A long, awful silence. That's when I knew. They'd helped him. Of course they had. That's what you do for investments, right? You double down. You protect your position. You don't let a little thing like reality interfere with your vision of the future. I asked the question anyway. Mom, what did you and Dad do? She started crying. Real tears this time, not just a brittle voice. We took out our retirement fund. She said, we thought it would be enough to cover everything. We thought Alex would turn it around. How much? I asked, though I already knew the answer would be bad. Everything, she whispered. We cashed out the entire 401k. Early withdrawal. Penalties. Taxes. We lost almost 40% of it to fees, but we thought we were saving his future. Here's the thing about financial decisions made in panic. They tend to come in clusters. One bad choice leads to another. Each one worse than the last, until you're in a hole so deep you can't see daylight. The 401k was enough. Not even close. So they'd gone to a bank for a home equity line of credit. The bank had laughed them out of the building. Retired couple, no income, trying to borrow against a house that was barely halfway paid off to cover their adult son's gambling debts? Not a chance. So they'd found another option, a hard money lender, the kind that advertises on bus benches and cable TV at 2 a.m, the kind that doesn't ask too many questions because they don't need to. They already know you're desperate. 25% annual interest, 3-year balloon payment. If you default, they take the house. No negotiation. No mercy, just business. Mom didn't tell me all this in one conversation. It came out in pieces over the next week. A detail here, an admission there. Each phone call revealed another layer of the disaster. Each conversation made it clearer that they'd bet everything on Alex and lost. They'd taken a hard money loan 8 months ago. They'd made exactly 2 payments before the money ran out. Now they were 6 months behind. The lender had filed for foreclosure. The house where I grew up, where they'd lived for 30 years, was going to auction. And only now, with the sheriff's notice taped to their front door, did they think to call me. Not to tell me what happened. Not to apologize for ignoring my offer a decade ago. Not to ask for advice. To demand I fix it. The call came on a Saturday morning. I was having coffee, reading news on my tablet, enjoying the kind of peaceful weekend that comes from having your life in order. My phone rang. Mom's number. I almost didn't answer, but some old habit of duty kicked in. I picked up. She was hysterical. Full breakdown. Words tumbling over each other so fast I could barely understand them. The house. The loan. The auction. They were going to lose everything. What were they going to do? Where would they live? I tried to calm her down. I asked questions. I got fragments of answers between sobs. Then I heard my father's voice in the background, sharp and commanding. Give me the phone. Give it to me right now. Dad didn't waste time with emotion. He had a plan. He always had a plan. The problem was his plans had the same success rate as Alex's business ventures. That's enough crying, he said, not to me but to Mom. Mark, he continued, it's time to step up. Your brother is a victim here. He was defrauded, taken advantage of. The people he trusted betrayed him, and now we're all paying the price. I made a non-committal sound. Dad took it as agreement and kept going. We're losing the house. The auction is in 3 weeks. We need you to use your VA loan to buy it back from the lender. You have access to that veteran mortgage benefit. You can get a loan with no money down. You buy the house. We keep living here, and we'll pay you rent until we get back on our feet. There was something almost impressive about the audacity. They'd ignored me for a decade, laughed off my money as lunch money and soldier money, bet everything on Alex's promises, lost it all, and now they wanted me to use my veterans' benefits, earned through actual service and sacrifice, to bail them out of a mess they created. I took a breath. Dad, I said slowly, I offered you $15,000 10 years ago. You told me to keep my soldier money. You said you weren't charity cases. The line went quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then Dad's voice came back, harder now. Don't you dare throw that in my face. That was different. This is family. This is your parents losing their home. You owe us. Owe you? I repeated. Yes, he snapped. We raised you. We fed you. We put a roof over your head for 18 years. You owe us. You're military. You have a pension. You have this VA loan sitting there unused. We're not asking for your money. We're asking you to use your benefits to help your family in crisis. Before I could respond, I heard Alex's voice in the background. Louder, angrier. Is that Mark? Let me talk to him. Give me the phone. There was fumbling. Then Alex's voice came through, pitched high with self-righteous fury. You selfish piece of work. He started, you're sitting on all that military money, that pension, those benefits, while your family is suffering, while I'm drowning in debt because of circumstances beyond my control. You have the power to help, and you're just sitting there. What kind of brother are you? The kind who offered help when you needed it and got laughed at, I thought but didn't say. Alex wasn't done. Mom and Dad sacrificed everything for me because they knew I had potential. They believed in me. And yeah, things didn't work out exactly as planned, but that's not my fault. The crypto market crashed. I got bad advice. I was victimized by people I trusted. Every sentence was a masterpiece of deflection. Nothing was his fault. Everything was something that happened to him. Not because of him. The golden child, still shining in his own eyes, even while standing in the ruins of his parents' retirement. You're obligated, he said, using the same word Dad had used. Family is obligated to help family. That's how this works. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to use that VA loan to buy back the house. Or, better yet, just give Mom and Dad your pension payments for the next few years. You're single, no kids. You don't need it. Let them use it to settle with the lender. I sat there listening to him explain how my decade of military service, my benefits, my entire financial stability was actually just their emergency fund. Theirs to demand whenever the investment failed. The insurance policy was being called in, not because the house was burning, because they'd set it on fire themselves and now demanded I pay for the damages. I waited until Alex ran out of steam, until the silence stretched long enough to be uncomfortable. Then I spoke. I'll see what I can do, I said. Give me a few days to look into options. Relief flooded through the phone. Thank God, Mom breathed. I knew you'd help. I knew you wouldn't let us down. Dad cleared his throat. Good man. I knew you'd come through. Family takes care of family. Alex said something that might have been thank you, but sounded more like finally. I told them I'd call them back. I ended the call. I sat there for a moment, coffee cold in my hand. They'd laughed at my soldier money when I'd offered it as a gift 10 years ago. Now, they demanded my entire future as an obligation. They weren't asking for help. They were demanding I throw my life into the same fire where they'd burned theirs. I stood up, walked to my computer. I didn't open my banking app. I didn't call my mortgage broker. I didn't look up VA loan requirements. I opened my browser, typed in the county recorder's office website, entered their address. They wanted me to see what I could do. Fine, I'd see what I could do, just not what they expected. The Air Force taught me one thing above all else. Proper planning prevents poor performance. The 7 Ps, they called it in basic training. Words to live by. My family was a walking example of poor performance, missing every single P. And me, I was about to give them a masterclass in planning. The county recorder's website wasn't fancy. Government sites never are, but it had everything I needed. Public records, foreclosure filings, auction notices, all there in black and white for anyone who knew where to look. I found their property in about 30 seconds. Entered the address. Hit search. Default notice. Filed 6 months ago. Hard money lender listed as Titanium Capital Group, which was exactly the kind of name a predatory lender would choose. Sounds strong. Sounds legitimate. Really just means they'll take your house without blinking. I scroll down, and there they were. The magic words. Notice of public auction. Date, next Tuesday. Location, county courthouse steps. Minimum bid, outstanding loan balance plus fees and costs. Total, $247,500. I read it twice, then a third time, not because I didn't understand it, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything. They didn't have months to figure this out. They didn't even have weeks. They had days. 6 days, to be precise. And they'd spent 3 of those days working up the courage to call me and demand I fix their mess. The auction was in 72 hours. I leaned back in my chair, looked at the ceiling, thought about timing, about leverage, about the difference between what people ask for and what they actually need. They'd asked me to use my VA loan to buy the house back from the lender, to essentially become their mortgage holder while they live their rent-free or at some nominal amount, promising to pay me back someday. Someday when Alex's next venture worked out. Someday when they got back on their feet. Someday that would never come. That was their plan. Use my veterans' benefits as their personal bailout fund. But here's what they didn't understand about auctions. You don't negotiate with the lender. You don't buy the house from them. You show up with money and you buy it from the county. Clean sale. New deed. New owner. They wanted me to save them. Fine. But salvation comes in different forms. I opened a new tab. Logged into my brokerage account, looked at the numbers I'd been building for a decade, the soldier money they'd mocked, the lunch money that wasn't worth their time, the pennies I'd been stacking while they were burning through their retirement. The insurance policy had appreciated nicely. I had more than enough. Enough to bid, enough to win, enough to do exactly what they'd asked me to do, just not the way they'd expected. I picked up my phone, called my mortgage broker, got his voicemail because it was Saturday, left a message asking about pre-approval for an investment property purchase at auction. Then I called my real estate attorney, also voicemail, left another message about auction procedures and same-day deed transfers. But here's the thing. I didn't actually need either of them. My family was right about one thing. I did have access to a VA loan, 0 down payment, favorable terms, a benefit earned through service. A weapon, if you wanted to think of it that way. But they'd forgotten about the other weapon, the one I'd been building in silence for 10 years. Cash, actual liquidity, the kind of money that makes you dangerous in auction because you don't need to wait for loan approval. You just show up and bid. Between my savings, my 401k loan option, and my brokerage account, I could put together a cash offer that would blow away any investor looking for a flip because they needed profit margin. I didn't need profit. I needed justice. And justice, it turns out, costs exactly $247,500, plus fees. My dad used to say Alex was a smart one, and I was a hard worker. The clever one versus the dependable one. The visionary versus the grunt. He said it like it was a compliment to both of us. Like each of us had our role to play. Well, the smart one had just gambled away his parents' retirement and their house. Let's see what the hard worker could do with a little planning and a lot of compounded interest. I spent Sunday doing research, auction procedures, bidding strategies, title transfer timelines, due diligence on the property itself, though I knew it better than any inspector could tell me. I'd grown up there. I knew every creaky floorboard and every leak the kitchen sink had ever sprung. Monday morning, my broker called back. He could get me pre-approved for $250,000 in about 4 hours. Did I want him to rush it? I told him yes, but also told him I might not need it. I had another option I was exploring. He didn't ask questions. Good brokers don't. My attorney called back Monday afternoon. Auction procedures were straightforward. Show up, register the bid, have proof of funds or a cashier's check. Winning bidder gets the deed, usually same day or within 48 hours. Former owners have no redemption period on hard money loans in our state. Once it's sold, it's sold. Perfect. Monday evening, my phone rang. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. Then Dad. Then Alex. Then Mom again. I waited until the fourth call to answer. Mark, Mom said, her voice tight with stress. Have you talked to the bank? What's happening? We haven't heard from you. I kept my voice calm. Military calm. The kind of tone that suggests everything is under control, even when it isn't. I told you I'd look into options. I'm working on a final resolution. Everything will be handled by Tuesday at 2 p.m. Just make sure you're home. What does that mean? Dad's voice in the background. What final resolution? I answered before Mom could relay the question. It means the problem will be solved on Tuesday. The auction is Tuesday morning. By 2 p.m., you'll know the outcome. Just be at the house. Relief flooded through the phone. Oh, thank God, Mom said. You found a way. I knew you would. I knew you'd come through for us. Dad got on the line. Good man, Mark. I'm sorry I doubted you. Family takes care of family. So what's the plan? Are you using the VA loan? Are you bringing a cashier's check to lender? I'll handle it, I said. You don't need to worry about the details. Just be home Tuesday afternoon. Alex got on the line. About time, he said. I knew you'd realize this was the right thing to do. We're going to remember this. When I get my next venture off the ground, I'll make sure you're taken care of. Sure, I said. See you Tuesday. I hung up. They thought I was gathering money to pay their lender, to satisfy their debt, to make their problem disappear, so they could stay in their house and keep living like the past decade hadn't happened. They didn't understand auctions. At an auction, you don't pay someone's debt. You buy an asset. And the former owner's debt? That's not your problem anymore. That's theirs. I wasn't saving them. I was securing an investment. There's a difference. Tuesday morning, I woke up early, showered, put on my best suit, the navy one I wore to contract negotiations. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw someone who'd spent 10 years preparing for a moment they didn't know was coming. Proper planning prevents poor performance. I'd done the planning. Time to see about the performance. The county courthouse sat downtown, all gray stone and important-looking columns. The kind of building that reminds you laws have weight. I parked in the public lot. Checked my watch. 9:45. Auction started at 10. The steps were already populated. A dozen people, maybe, mostly men, mostly in casual business attire. I recognized the type. House flippers, real estate investors, people who made their living buying distressed properties at auction and selling them for profit. They held coffee cups and chatted easily. This was Tuesday morning routine for them. Another auction, another opportunity. Nothing personal, just business. I registered with the clerk. Showed my cashier's check. Proof of funds. She barely looked at me. Handed me a bidder number. Number 14. The auctioneer was efficient. No nonsense. He wasn't there to tell stories or create drama. He was there to sell properties and move on to the next county. He read addresses, started bids, sold houses. 3 properties went before mine. I watched the rhythm, how the investors bid. When they dropped out, the sweet spot seemed to be 10 to 15% below market value. Enough margin to make the flip worth it after repairs and holding costs. Then the auctioneer read an address I knew by heart. My childhood home. The house where I'd learned to ride a bike. Where I'd fixed my first computer. Where I'd sat at a dinner table and been told my money was lunch money. Soldier money. Nothing worth taking seriously. Bidding starts at $247,500. The auctioneer said, "Do I have $247,500? A man in a polo shirt raised his paddle. 247.5. Another bidder. 250. Polo shirt. 255. I watched, waited, let them establish the rhythm. Let them think this was just another property. 260, someone bid. 265. 270. The bidding slowed. Polo shirt looked uncertain. 270 was probably pushing his margin. He bid anyway. 275. Silence. The auctioneer looked around. 275. Do I hear 280? More silence. Going once at 275. I raised my paddle. $300,000. I said, clearly. Cash. Every head turned. The auctioneer paused. Polo shirt's mouth actually opened slightly. 300,000 was 15% over the minimum. 25,000 over the current bid. It was an absurd number for an auction. It left no room for profit. No investor in their right mind would bid that high. But I was an investor looking for profit. I was an insurance policy collecting on a claim. The auctioneer recovered quickly. 300,000. Do I hear 310? Silence. Complete silence. Polo shirt shook his head slowly. The other investors were already looking at their papers, moving on mentally to the next property. Going once at 300,000, the auctioneer said, going twice. Sold, he said, and banged his gavel. To bidder 14. 15 minutes. That's how long it took to transfer ownership of my childhood home. 15 minutes to go from their asset to mine. From the house where I was the backup plan to house I owned outright. I signed papers. The clerk processed the deed. By 11 a.m., I held the title in my hands. Legal. Binding. Done. I sat in my car for a moment, looked at the document. Property owner, Mark Sullivan. No mortgage. No liens. Clean title. Mine. I checked my watch. 1:15. I told them to be home at 2. Time to deliver the final resolution. I drove to my old neighborhood. Familiar streets. Familiar trees. Nothing had changed except everything had changed. Last time I'd driven here, I was visiting my parents' house. Now I was driving to my property. I pulled up at exactly 2 p.m. Military precision. When you tell someone 2 o'clock, you mean 2 o'clock. The front door opened before I was out car. Mom came out first. Then Dad. Then Alex behind them, looking impatient. Their faces were a mix of anxiety and hope. The kind of expression people wear when they're waiting for rescue. I grabbed my folder from the passenger seat. Walked up the driveway I'd learned to skateboard on. Mark, Mom said, her voice breaking. Thank God. Did you make it? Did you talk to the bank? Did they stop the auction? I stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. Looked up at them. My family. The people who'd raised me and dismissed me in equal measure. Yes, I said calmly. I made it. The auction happened this morning. Dad's face tightened. What do you mean happened? Did someone buy it? Can we still negotiate with them? I climbed the steps slowly. Someone did buy it, I said. The sale is final. New deed was issued about 3 hours ago. Mom started crying. No, she whispered. No, we're going to lose the house. Where will we go? What are we going to do? I reached the top step. Stood level with them. Looked at Dad. Then at Alex. Then back at Mom. You're not going to lose the house, I said. The new owner bought it for $300,000. Cash. Well above market. Very generous bid, actually. The relief that flooded their faces would have been touching if it wasn't so completely misplaced. Oh, thank God, Mom said. So someone bought it, and maybe we can rent from them? Maybe they'll let us work out a payment plan? Dad was already calculating. 300,000? That's 40, maybe 50,000 over value. Who would pay that much? Do you know who bought it? Alex pushed forward. Yeah, who's the idiot who overpaid? Maybe we can convince them to sell it back to us when I get my funding. I opened my folder, pulled out the deed, held it up so they could see the county seal, the official stamp, the name on the ownership line. I said, I'm the idiot who overpaid. And this house doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to me. Silence. Complete, total silence. Like someone had hit a pause button on reality. Mom's face went blank. Dad's turned gray. Alex's mouth opened and closed like he was trying to form words, but couldn't find them. What? Dad finally said. What are you talking about? I mean exactly what I said. This property was sold at auction this morning at 10 a.m. I was the winning bidder. I own this house now. Not you. Me. You bought our house? Alex found his voice high and disbelieving. What kind of sick game is this? I looked at him directly. Not your house, I said. My house. You lost your house when you gambled away $250,000 and convinced Mom and Dad to drain their retirement to cover your debts. They lost it when they took a predatory loan they couldn't pay back. But Mom started, then stopped. Her eyes were wide, confused. You said you'd help. You said you'd fix this. I did fix it, I said. The house isn't in foreclosure anymore. The debt is satisfied. Problem solved. Dad's shock was turning to anger. I could see it building behind his eyes. You conniving little punk, he said. We asked you to help the family, not steal from us. Steal? I kept my voice level. You can't steal what someone's already lost. The bank owned this house, not you. You defaulted 6 months ago. I bought it legally at a public auction, just like you asked me to get involved financially. I got involved. I pulled another document from my folder. This one was a lease agreement I'd drawn up with my attorney yesterday. Professional, standard, legal. Since the house is mine now, I said, we need to discuss our business relationship going forward. Market rate rent in this neighborhood is $2,800 a month. I'm willing to give you a family discount. $2,500, first of the month. Lease term is month to month. Mom actually gasped. You're going to charge us rent to live in our own house? Your former house, I corrected. And yes, that's how rental properties work. I'm actually being generous. I could easily get $2,800 from other tenants. This is insane, Alex said, his voice rising. You can't do this. We're family. You're supposed to help us, not exploit us. I turned to look at him fully. Really looked at him. The golden child. The investment that never paid dividends. The future Steve Jobs who never built anything except debt. You wanted help? I said. I offered $15,000 10 years ago. Dad laughed and told me to keep my soldier money. You said it was lunch money. Mom said my concern was sweet, but unnecessary. You all made it very clear my money wasn't worth taking seriously. That was different, Dad started. No, I interrupted. It wasn't. It was exactly the same. Money is money. Help is help. The only difference is back then you didn't think you needed it. Now you do. But you don't get to decide that my resources are yours just because your investment failed. I held up the lease agreement again. Here are your options, I said. Sign this lease. Pay rent. Live here as my tenants. Or don't sign it, and I'll start formal eviction proceedings. Your choice. You wouldn't, Mom said. You wouldn't throw your own parents out on the street. I wouldn't throw you anywhere, I said. You'd be choosing to leave. There's a difference. I'm offering you housing at below market rates. That's more than you offered me when you had the chance. What about me? Alex demanded. Where am I supposed to go? I looked at the lease agreement, flipped to the second page, made a show of reading it. According to this lease, occupancy is limited to the two signers. That would be Mom and Dad. You're not listed as a resident. What? Alex's face went red. You can't be serious. Completely serious, I said. You have 48 hours to collect your belongings and vacate the property. After that, you'll be trespassing, and I'll call the police. The screaming started then, all three of them at once. A chorus of betrayal and anger and disbelief. How could I do this? What kind of son was I? What kind of brother? Family doesn't do this to family. I was evil. I was cruel. I was worse than the predatory lenders. I let them vent. Stood there with my folder. Waited. When they finally ran out of steam, I spoke quietly. 10 years ago, I said, I came home with $15,000. Money I'd earned in a combat zone. Money I'd saved specifically to help you. And you laughed at it. You called it soldier money. Lunch money. You told me to go back to playing war while Alex handled the real adult business of losing everything. But I was just a kid then, Alex protested weakly. You were 24, I said. Same age I was when I earned that money. I looked at Dad. You said you weren't charity cases. You said Alex was going to buy you a house. Well, he bought you something. He bought you $250,000 in debt and a hard money loan you couldn't pay. I set the lease agreement on the porch railing. There it is, I said. Take it or leave it. You have until Friday to decide. I turned to walk back to my car. Mom called after me, tears in her voice. Mark, please, don't do this. We're your parents. I stopped, looked back at them. You demanded my pension, I said. My entire financial future. You didn't ask for help. You demanded I sacrifice everything I'd built to fix a problem you created. You wanted a business transaction. Fine, this is a business transaction. I got in my car, started the engine. As I pulled away, I could see them on the porch, standing there in shock, on the property that used to be theirs, that they'd bet and lost, that I'd bought with the soldier money they'd mocked. Dad had told me once that Alex would buy them a house someday. He was almost right. The golden child, the investment in the future, had indeed caused their house to be bought. Just not by him, by the insurance policy they'd forgotten about until the fire was already burning. They still lived there. Mom and Dad signed the lease that Friday. They had nowhere else to go. They've never been late with rent. Not once. I think they're too afraid of what happens if they miss a payment. Alex moved to a studio apartment across town. Last I heard, he's working in retail management, still talking about his next big venture. Still sure he's one deal away from everything turning around. We don't talk much anymore. Holiday cards, occasional texts, the kind of relationship you have with tenants who happen to share your DNA. People ask me sometimes if I feel guilty, if I regret what I did, if I wish I'd just helped them the normal way. I don't, not even a little. They taught me something valuable. Hope, it turns out, is a liability. It's what you bet on when you're not willing to do the actual work. It's what you sell to yourself when the numbers don't add up, but you're not ready to face reality. But soldier money? Lunch money? Those pennies they laughed at? Properly invested, properly planned, properly executed? That's an asset. A real one. The kind that appreciates. The kind that pays dividends. The kind that buys houses at auction. The insurance policy appreciated nicely after all. And when the house finally caught fire, I did exactly what insurance policies are supposed to do. I paid out, just not to them. To me. Proper planning prevents poor performance. The Air Force taught me that. My family just gave me the chance to prove it.